Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen. Well, guys, it is confirmed. It is done. I know a lot of you will be very relieved about this. Ross Wilson to Nottingham Forest will be done within the next 48 hours. How do we know? Well, the boys from Heart and Hand, a great podcast. Love listening to Heart and Hand. It is an absolute quality piece of media. Definitely give that a listen, guys. Obviously, now check out their Patreon as well. Absolutely superb. Um, Rangers and Nottingham Forest have agreed terms on Ross Wilson, barring any last-minute hitches. The deal should be completed in the next 48 hours. So it is confirmed Ross Wilson to Nottingham Forest is done. Now, obviously, it was rumoured yesterday after Nottingham Forest parted company with their sporting director that Forest were interested in securing the services of Ross Wilson. The other person who was in the crosshairs was Jack Lester, who is currently the sporting director, ex-striker for Sheffield United, and also now sporting director for Sheffield United. But with Sheffield United on the verge of heading into the Premier League, I think Leicester, obviously being a Sheffield United man, was very reluctant to leave. So obviously Forest have gone for Ross Wilson. Now, this is great news for a lot of Rangers fans. An awful lot of Rangers fans are exceptionally happy about this decision. In particular, obviously, the Union Bears will be exceptionally happy about this after all those protests that went on at the games in recent times. All those banners, all those time for change banners, all those pictures of Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson with the cancelled signs over the top of them. So obviously it is confirmed that Wilson will be heading south of the border and going to sign for Nottingham Forest. Like I said, confirmed by the Heart in Hand guys. All sorted and secured, signed, sealed, delivered. Now, what is even better is that Rangers will receive a compensation package for securing the services of Ross Wilson, which is brilliant. I mean, especially considering, that a lot of people said that this was his last chance saloon this summer, going into the summer to work with Beale to bring in players to obviously get Rangers back into a position to challenge for the league title and really challenge Celtic. And had he failed this summer, then Rangers would have probably had to have sacked him and therefore had to have paid him off, which would have cost a substantial amount of money given the rather large and generous salary that Ross Wilson was getting. But now, obviously, with Wilson leaving Rangers, it's Rangers who receive the compensation. I really do hope that in the agreement that was signed between Nottingham Forest and Glasgow Rangers, we have included a no refunds and returns policy on Wilson. But yeah, so it is done and dusted, all confirmed. Great news for Rangers. So this got me thinking, obviously, that now Wilson is gone, looking back over his time at Rangers, which, the transfers that he presided over. Now, I know that, Wilson at the AGM said that, it wasn't him that signed the players and the managers had a large part and a large say in that. I think, obviously, that is very clouded in, exactly what Ross Wilson did at the club for that huge salary that he got. In terms of the fact that let's, move away from transfers. We will look at the transfers in a moment, but, moving away from transfers for a moment, the fact that a number of key players or even players that could have been sold for a substantial amount of cash were allowed to run down their contracts. You are facing a situation obviously this summer where 8 players effectively, if you don't include Malik Tillman, are out of contract. Players that perhaps we could have got some money for had, Wilson shown a bit more foresight and actually, done something with their contracts last year. Again, we are in a similar situation with the likes of John Lundstrom and Borna Barisic, both of who are going into the final years of their deals. There's a situation where whoever takes over as sporting director and also Michael Beale have some decisions to make this summer, because we cannot be sitting here in a year's time facing the same situation with a huge long list of players who are out of contract, including the likes of Lundstrom and Barisic, and are able to walk for absolutely nothing. That is not the best way to run a football team, and the best way to run a business is to allow your assets to leave for nothing and get nothing in return for them. And especially having invested all that time, effort, and money into those players to develop them to be the players they are today. So a lot of that goes on Wilson. You know, as a sporting director, he should have had the heads up. He should have had the foresight to deal with that and to offer contracts. You know, obviously in consultation with the manager and in consultation with the chairman. But you know, it's down to Wilson at the end of the day to do that, to renew those deals, and he didn't do that. And he's ending up costing Rangers an awful lot of money. I mean, I know that Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos are not in the best of form at this moment in time. However, both Kent and Morelos probably could have been sold for at least some cash this summer had they been under contract or a contract of some description. So, you know, it's exceptionally disappointing for Rangers to obviously miss out. And that is obviously down to the mismanagement of Ross Wilson to some degree, as well as obviously the management staff at the club. You know, in terms of his time at Rangers, you know, he presided over a number of transfers in to the club, 28 in total, I think it is. I mean, if we look at this list for a minute, and I went through and, you know, looked at a couple of different sources for this, the Scotsman, the Daily Record, the Glasgow Times, etc., etc. So these are the players that he signed, and he spent over £40 million in his time as sporting director. So we've got Bongani Zungu, who was a miss, Leon Balogun, who was a hit, Aaron Ramsey, who was one of his pet projects. I mean, that certainly wasn't a Geo deal, was it at all? That was definitely a Ross Wilson deal. Definitely massive miss, big wages, injured, missed the penalty in the Europa League final. So definitely a miss there. Calvin Bassey, I think, was undisputedly a hit. And obviously we sold him on for a substantial amount of cash. Ben Davis, player now, I think he is very much a player we are on the fence with. You know, is he someone who long term is going to do the job for Rangers, or is he someone who will go on to be a miss? I think, you know, he's solid enough, but he's good with the ball at his feet, but he's not a battling defender. I read a brilliant article by Stevie Clark, I think it is, of Four Lads Had a Dream. Absolutely superb article, you know, talking about Davis and his weaknesses in terms of his robustness. And I think that is definitely something we need to look at, signing a robust central defender in the summer. Cedric Itten was a miss. Fashion Sakala hit. You know, I think Fashion has been fantastic and he is a very good player. You just got to look at his numbers this season. Ridvan Yilmaz, you know, rising to over £5 million, but that we're very much on the fence, you know, given the fact that obviously Ridvan has missed a large proportion of the season with injury and hasn't really had an opportunity to play yet. Definitely on the fence there. Antonio Čolak, you know, check out the video that I did earlier, you know, the strong rumours that Beale doesn't fancy Čolak and Čolak will be gone in the summer. You know, Čolak is someone who are a bit on the fence with it. You can't really say he's a hit yet. You can't really say he's a miss yet. So there we go. Nicholas Vasquez, I think we can say is a hit. He has been phenomenal since he's come to the club. The next Barry Ferguson, in my opinion. John Suter missed too much time with injury at the moment, so really you cannot say again another fence sitter. Charlie McCann, if you remember him, came out of Manchester United's youth system, a miss. Janino Bacuna, a miss. Matteo Zakowski, a miss. For definite, these players are all players that have done nothing for Rangers and contributed very little indeed, if anything, to the club. You know, let's move on now. Jack Simpson, miss. Who? Tom Lawrence, I think, is an NA because he got injured too soon into his signing. Too soon. I think, you know, Lawrence will come back, and I think that will change to being a hit. I think Lawrence is a quality player. Namdi Offerball, I think it's unfair to grade, you know, given the fact that he's out with that heart condition. Although you've got to argue what were the medical staff doing, you know, to pass his medical at that point. Lundstrom, I know he had the good Europa League run, but, you know, at the start of his time at Rangers, he was poor. And he is displaying really poor tendencies. Slows down the game, gives the ball away, passes it sideways and backwards too much. So for me, John Lundstrom is a miss. And again, going into the final year of his contract, why has nothing been acted upon about that? Let's move him on in the summer. Yanis Hadji is a hit, definite hit. I mean, I really do think we should see more of Yanis Hadji towards the end of the season. I'd be definitely in favour of playing Hadji over Kent in the last few league games. Amad Diallo, who has been an unmitigated superb superstar at Sunderland in the Championship this season for them, 11 goals in 35 appearances, just looking at his stats. He was a miss at Rangers, really did fail. James Sands went back to MLS, it was a miss. Jermaine Defoe, it was a hit, you know, goal scorer, definitely. Malik Tillman, I think, is another fence city. You know, you really cannot, I don't think, give an opinion on Malik. Yes, Malik looks good against those lesser teams, your Dundee Uniteds, your Motherwells of this world, but against Celtic and in Europe, he has disappointed a little. So he's definitely a fence. Again, I think we can, end of the season, we can pass a judgment on him. Kamar Roof. Now, I know that Kamar Roof is probably the best striker at the club in terms of actually taking chances, but he's just never fit. the guy's a sick note. The guy gets a grass stain on him and he has to have a month out injured. So he's a definite miss for me. Cantwell is a hit. I think Cantwell will go on to be a legend of Rangers, a quality player. Scott Wright is a miss. John McLaughlin, I know he's a free transfer, but again, a miss. Never really came in, never challenged Alan McGregor, despite playing well in League One. And Rabbi Matondo, the £2.8 million worth of 28 grand's worth a week's worth of miss, that has never ever done anything for the club, and I think will be moved on in the summer. So you look at that, and that's 14 out of 28. 50% of the signings under Wilson have been misses, which is not a great track record. I wonder, do Nottingham Forest really know what they are getting themselves in for? Guys, remember, you can hit that sub, please, and ring that bell for the channel. That'd be fantastic. You can find us on Twitter at GRN1872. You can find us on Instagram at Glasgow Rangers Nation. Facebook, you can find our group, Glasgow Rangers Nation Official. Our email is glasgowrangersnation@gmail.com. And you can buy the pod a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/UK Penguins tea. Okay, guys. I know, bizarre email address. There is a reason for that. Anyway, guys, thank you for that. But the next question, obviously, is who do Rangers bring in? Who is going to be the guy that they bring in to replace Ross Wilson? I think this will be a process they do. I think sporting directors are here to stay. You look at the English Premier League, you look at even the English Championship, and there are a number of teams there, a large number of teams who operate with that sporting director to take some of the pressure over contract negotiations and transfer negotiations off the manager. Yes, so I think it is important that the manager identifies the players. Of course, it is. However, it is, I think, a good idea to take away that financial side away from the manager and allow the manager to concentrate on identifying the players and coaching the players. After all, that is what he's there for. So I think there will be a case of the sporting director coming in and taking over. Obviously, there is, I think, a guy called John Park, who is head of scouting at Rangers. He could well be, someone who is a potential person there to come in and take over. Other names that have Sorry about that, my mic went off. So Davy Weir, Christian Nerlinger is another one who has been mentioned as well. Has been a potential thing. He did the job for Bayern Munich, so obviously has experience at the very highest level. So, who comes in? Another person who's been mentioned is a guy called Salvatore Monaco, who is the assistant head of recruitment at Brighton, who are, well renowned for bringing in some very talented players who then they go on to sell for quite a lot of money, like Trossard, who they sold to Arsenal. So, who could it be? And I think that is an important decision for new chairman John Bennett to make as to, who he brings in to replace Ross Wilson in the long term. I think there will be a pressure on him to do that before the summer, so that Beale is not under pressure to obviously negotiate the transfer fees, negotiate the contracts, and also try to deal with the players going out, coming in, the players under contract, the players who have 1 year left on the deal, who need their deals looked at, etc., etc. That is an awful lot for him to deal with, especially if we want Beale to be in a position to, as of the start of the pre-season in July, to start coaching this team to be ready to challenge Celtic, in the new year. Well, guys, that's the news for tonight. It just seems like been such a busy news day here with Glasgow Rangers and here on Glasgow Rangers Nation. Like I said, the aim of this channel is always to bring you your team every single day, bring you all the latest news, views, and updates about your team every single day. And the way you make sure you don't miss out, hit the sub, ring the notification bell, set it to all so it pops up on your computer or on your mobile device so you don't miss out. And all our contact information is scrolling along the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much for choosing to watch Glasgow Rangers Nation. It means absolute world to us. We love talking to you. We love talking Rangers. We are fan driven. Please check out the podcast tomorrow night with Cody Smith and Jordan Wotherspoon of Rangers News, which is a Facebook group, Big Rangers fans. Like I said, we are a fans channel, bringing fans on board as well as people from pods and pundits and analysts and journalists. Guys, please come and check that out. Thank you for watching. I will be back to speak to you again really soon here on Glasgow Rangers Nation.